Hey, 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 welcome back to another episode of Unapologetically Black, Never Broken, Always Empowered. I am your host, Brittany, and I am being joined by our guest this evening, Anthony Quarles. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we start every show with a mental health check-in. How have you been? Where's your head at? How you feeling? What's been
Yeah,
going on with you?
busy. It's a busy time for my wife and I moving, and she's been out of town for work, and I'm a supervisor full time, and I have a private practice part time. So it's just a lot to try to do all at once. But I can't complain. I'm blessed, and overall all those things, even though it's a lot, they're going well.
Good, good. I mean, sometimes transition is a little uncomfortable and getting used to it, but it sounds like everything's moving in a positive direction, so that's
For
good.
sure.
Yeah, for me everything's been good, nothing new. Um, so my husband's been working nights, and I just getting adjusted to it. I'm sure your wife has gotten adjusted to it because you are part of a little bit of the nightlife scene as a DJ, but
Yeah.
uh, me, I'm very needy, so
Yeah.
I'm like up until he gets home. So it's
Right.
definitely an adjustment over here.
For sure.
Um, but yeah, so this month we were talking all about different entertainers and people in the entertainment industry. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how that pertains to you. Um, so yeah, I'm just gonna hand the mic over.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So like I tell people but during the day I'm a licensed mental health therapist, and some nights and weekends I am, a DJ. Go by DJ Q. I've been DJing, started in the house, of course, and about 4 years ago. Um, didn't really think that it would, progress to anything besides just doing our little house parties, our little kickbacks. And then, just kind of my wife and people in my life are like, why don't you do anything like a real event or so? So my wife got me my first event at her job. It was like a corporate event.
Nice.
She booked me without asking. So that was like,
That's what we do.
right. So that, just talk about an anxiety attack or anything. And she's like, oh, I booked you for this Black History Month event. And I was like, when? She's like, oh, next week. So it was one of those things
She
where she
gave you
knew,
time.
right? But she knew if she asked, I would say no, because I'm like, oh, I'm just a house DJ. I just DJ in front of a few people. I don't, I'm not ready. But that
Right.
was a really great experience. And I learned that people don't know if you're new or not, especially if you show confidence. And if you believe that, you're supposed to be there, they'll probably believe it as well. So I learned that. And that's kind of helped me now do more events and more, put myself in situations that have more opportunities.
Awesome. So as far as being a DJ goes,
Mhm.
what are some of your kind of like most fun or even like craziest events you've done, or like what kind of events do you prefer to do?
Yeah. So right now I've been doing, since I'm a newer DJ, just been doing kind of things all over the place, from a wedding to birthday parties to hookah lounge to house party to beach house party, just random events. Some corporate events. And when we lived somewhere else, I did like a event for a nonprofit that was really cool. It was like a center for adults with disabilities, and there was like their like disco night, like one of the annual parties, and they were used to normally having like a Bluetooth speaker or something. So
Right.
their reaction to having like a DJ and being able to request songs and being able to interact, and that was just, for me, that was really cool to see how excited and how different that was for them. But some of those type of things, like more corporate type events, or anything nonprofit, it seems to, because that aligns just kind of what I do full time as well, trying to give back and connect with people, and have an opportunity to give something back to people that's different, that's not the typical party or club or something like that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I last month my little sister got married and the DJ was trash. Like I I like it's hard. I feel like it's hard, especially for weddings, right? Because you basically give them your playlist and then you can kind of get an idea of what, you know what I mean? Like you get an
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Like, and I know my sister-in-law, like she had her shit together. Okay. Like I know that that man received a list of songs. My husband had to like beg him to play something from the last 2 decades. Like it was just, it was terrible.
yeah.
So it's yeah. It doesn't feel like it should be as hard of a job as it seems like it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've learned from other people and other DJs who have been doing it longer and give me a little, advice and things, it really is a lot about just knowing people and reading the room.
Mhm.
It's not playing all the time the things you enjoy in your personal life. It's like, what will the masses enjoy? Like, what is something
Right.
that is probably relatable to most people here, which that'll give you that reaction you're looking for. But if you're just playing all the random bangers that you play in the car,
Right.
from unknown artists because you think it sounds good, right? But like
Right.
you said, you give people a list, and some people they'll do what they want for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel that your background in psychology and therapy plays a role or even like kind of helps in you being able to read a room in while you're being a DJ or in certain scenes and parties?
Yeah, I think that was, when I've tried to talk to different, especially like nonprofit places or any, corporate type of event, those are kind of a selling point because most DJs aren't a licensed mental health counselor,
Right.
so it's
Exactly.
like, they're like, oh, that's kind of a selling point for those type of places where like, oh, you connect with our missions here and our values. Plus you
Mhm.
can give us hopefully some good music. But, to answer your question, I think so because I've been a person my whole life, going to parties or going to situations where I'm like, this person clearly doesn't know that people aren't having the best time. I'm like, well, if I could change the music, right? And I always tell people, I'm like, it can be difficult depending on your crowd, but there's so many popular songs. Like you could
Mhm.
just play only popular radio songs, and most people will probably leave saying, oh, the DJ was good. Like the DJ played all the hits. But so to me, it's kind of simple, and you can see people's body language, and if the song's going too long and things like that. But I think it's just a lot of it is just knowing music as well, and you
Right.
have to kind of be on the scene a little bit. Like I don't go out all the time, but you kind of have to be in tune with what's happening on the scene, but also like social media. There's a lot of social media
Mhm.
songs that will get people going that may not be the typical radio, like TikTok songs and remixes and stuff. So if you're like in tune with like the culture and on the scene a little bit, I feel like that makes it a lot easier for sure. But I think the psychology part is like this hidden advantage,
It's a
that
good ability.
I have.
That's hilarious. So how do you keep up with the scene and the culture? Is it just from being on social media, or do you have like kids or nieces and nephews that keep you hip?
Yeah, so we don't have kids, but I try. My wife hates it. I'm always on TikTok, but I'm like, there's so many random remixes and songs that end
Yeah.
up becoming like radio songs or something, or some unknown person blows up on TikTok. Now they're like signed to some major, record label. But I think social media is really the main thing that really keeps me, in tune and kind of keeps me hip. I guess keeps me kind of young because when I did a Sweet 16, they requested like a lot of TikTok songs.
Yeah.
Some of those songs aren't songs you can necessarily download. You
Right.
have to be creative with ways you can find them. But, I think, we go out here and there and just things like that. Or if I do an event somewhere I've never been, like when I moved up here to these like hookah lounges, we would go first to see
Mhm.
like what the other DJ does or to see like the vibe. Because the owner will tell you the vibe, but then you like see that what the people really like as well and try to
Right.
find that happy medium, of course.
Nice. Okay, so segueing into you being a therapist, how long have you been in that field, and what kind of got you started in being interested in mental health?
Yeah, so I've been a a therapist since 2016. So 6 plus years now. Time flies. What really got me into that field is just being in undergrad and not exactly knowing what I wanted to do next. So I picked up a minor in psychology, I think my sophomore year, and I found it a lot more interesting than being in majoring in legal studies and political science. I had this like random idea of being like a lawyer or attorney or something. No clue to this day where that idea came from. I think it just sounded good until you realize how hard it is. And then
Yeah.
psychology was like something that really connected with me early on. And the classes were, to me, they were like more practical. Like you're talking about behaviors and why people do and respond and react. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's simple compared to like policies and politics and all those things. So
Right.
just early on, I found that that was something I was more interested in. And then after undergrad, really didn't know what I was going to do because it's hard to find like psychology jobs with a bachelor's degree. So my
Hmm.
mom basically got me a job in our hometown at this mental health hospital, which really that's what led to me being a therapist, working on the children's unit and just being around kids, all day, every day as a mental health tech. There were a lot of social workers, nurses, doctors, and they're just talking to some of the social workers, and they kind of thought I could be a therapist the way I interacted with the kids and the way I led groups and things. So it was just multiple people playing a part in that idea that eventually happened for me by going back to graduate school. So just those kind of events led to me thinking it was a good idea to go back to school for a couple more years.
That's awesome because so in that bachelor period, that's where I got lost. So I too, I was a psych major and a
Yeah.
Spanish minor, and I wanted to do that, but it was just like I'm over school. Like I just felt burnt out when it was all said and done. So good
Yeah.
for you for going back and for
Yeah.
continuing to push forward because
Right. Thank
it
you.
definitely, and you can't really do anything with like a bachelor's in psych. Like maybe
No,
like
no, for real. It's like I would think I was making like $11 an hour, and I
yeah,
was like super excited because I never had like a full-time job. But I was
right.
like, "Dang, I'm working 40 hours, $11 an hour." I'm not very good at math, but the math was
It
not
wasn't mathing.
right. I was living at home with my mom, but so the checks were like 700 bucks. I thought I was balling out, but
Right.
then in reality, I was like, when I got a first raise, they were like, "Oh, here's like 25 cents or 50 cents or
Mhm.
something." And I was excited. Then I realized that didn't make a difference on your paycheck. You didn't
Exactly.
even see it. So I was like,
Exactly.
okay, that helped me. That motivated me a lot too. It's like I went to college to do this. So
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah,
I feel that. So how big of a role do you feel that music has on mental health and mental wellness?
yeah. I think music plays a huge part into people's overall well-being. It's there's always the jokes about when you're sad, listening to sad music and things like that. But I think there's some truth in all those things. When you're in a good mood and you want to have a good time, you play certain things. When you're not in the best mood, or you might have had a rough day, you may play something more slower paced or more relatable and kind of down. So I think for people, music for them is their therapy. People want to find things to connect with. That's why people that make more relatable music probably tend to have more success with,
Mhm.
it's nice hearing about fancy stuff and cars and clothes and stuff like that. But people love Drake because typically when he makes a song, especially older Drake, you will relate to the breakup and to the heartache and to the girl and to the
Right.
guy and things like that. So I feel like the relatable artists really connect with people, and I've seen people talk about how music helped them and saved their life and healed them because they related to something, to someone. And there's like these groups of people who all relate to different artists for different reasons, and they create their own like sense of community and family and things like that. So I just feel like music, really does help some people. Playing music, whether it's, an instrument or singing or DJ, that's therapeutic for a lot of people. Just listening
Mhm.
is therapeutic for a lot of people. So, there is music therapy. There are ways to really incorporate music into people's, mental wellness, mental health.
Yeah. With your personal practice, do you work with adults or children?
Adults.
Okay. And do you use music in any way in your practice, or are your two jobs exclusively separate?
They're exclusively separate. I talk music with some of my clients depending on their situation. But
Mhm.
I have thought about ways to kind of bridge that gap. And I've seen people do things, and I've talked to even the people I talk to, my support system, my wife, about maybe potentially having a combination of like promoting myself as a therapist DJ somehow, right? So
Right.
the idea would be to create these like therapeutic playlists at least where people love a good playlist that they don't have to create themselves. So
Mhm.
maybe creating them for different type of moods or different type of feelings, and just something like that where it's aligns with what I do full time, but it also aligns with the passion I have, outside of, working as a therapist.
I think that's super dope because I remember in my single days, or my dating days, like going through Spotify or YouTube and looking for like a breakup playlist
Yeah, yeah.
or like whatever it may be. And I didn't even know half those songs, but I was just gonna let it play and try to like relate to it. So I think that's a
Sure.
dope idea for sure. And there's definitely a place for it.
Yeah, I think so.
So, we all know that specifically in the Black community, but in general, that, and we're breaking down the walls, but there's a stigma surrounding mental health where, sorry, Jay Will said, so it sounds like you're the mood doctor.
Yeah.
That's funny. Um, so where do you feel the stigma around mental health, specifically in the Black community, kind of stems from? And how do we get around that?
Yeah, I think some of it stems from just some misinformation. I think it stems from a lack of like understanding and knowledge, and I also ultimately then stems from just a lack of resources for mental health services in the Black community, especially back in the day. Now you can pretty much find services specifically for certain neighborhoods, which is a great thing. But I think some of the people, other prior generations, just didn't have the resources we have now to really understand that we all probably could benefit from talking about something, and understanding that just because you have things to talk about doesn't make you less than, or doesn't make you crazy, or doesn't make you, a fit person in society, and I also just think some of it, growing up in Baptist church, I think some of it stems from the church,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because all I knew or all I've heard a lot of my early life was, when you're going through something, you pray and you go to church and you do that.
Right.
And then there's people who do that and still aren't well, and they're like, I'm not seeing a therapist because then people really gonna think I'm not well. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna take medication because then people really are gonna judge me. So I think a lot of it is just, that also that piece of being judged by your own people, is you don't want to come around people you enjoy being around and then find out you see a psychiatrist or a therapist, or you take medication because you have some type of mental health struggle. So
Right.
I think it's multiple layers to why things in the past were, different. But I am happy to be a therapist now because there's been so much progress made and so many platforms for Black people to receive services and to
Mhm.
know more about services. And then you see these a lot of times celebrities and just regular people be okay with saying, hey, I go to therapy. Hey, I take medication. Hey, I've had an anxiety attack, and so on and so forth. So
Right.
now people, like I said earlier, that sense of community, that sense of belonging, I think people have a need for some type of connection, and they get that now from social media a lot of times, and that's, I feel like that's been helpful with spreading more awareness and making therapy more acceptable. I feel like people now are like, you don't have a therapist? I feel like that's kind of a conversation when I've been around people. They're like, yeah, I go to therapy. And then somebody says, oh, I never
Right.
tried it. They're like, oh, you should try it. Why don't you have a therapist? So I feel like it's more acceptable, and it's okay to talk about publicly.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that's one of the benefits of our generation, because I feel like millennials are making it, we're normalizing it a
Yeah.
little bit more than, well, a lot more than any other generation before us, at least.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's a great thing, and that people are talking about it, because mental health is health. Like, you go and get a yearly physical. It's
Yeah.
also really important that you take care of your mind. And I mean, like, life is stressful.
Yeah.
So
For
just
sure.
having a sounding board that's not, within the chaos of your life is
Yeah.
always helpful.
Yeah.
Um, so as far as you being a therapist goes and being in the Black community, do you find that um, your clients or your Black clients feel more comfortable with you because you're Black? And do you think that kind of opens them up a little bit more than if they were to be talking to anyone else?
Yeah, I think almost every client I have right now is black, and majority are black men, which makes me happy just overall. It's just,
Absolutely.
but that is, I think that is their way of being intentional. The people who seek me out are seeking me out, part in because I'm a man, but a lot of part in because I'm a black man. So they're like,
Mhm.
if I'm gonna try it, I'd rather try it with someone who may be more relatable to me, that I may be more comfortable with. So I think that's why right now, the with me having my own part-time practice, pretty much all my clients are black men, and that's and they're open about that. They're like, oh well, I saw your profile, and I figured I would give it a try, and I figured this would probably be a good start, and I
Right.
and I welcome that, and I've been, more intentional myself with that, because when I first started out, I was just doing a lot of community-based work. A lot of places you just see whoever they send you. You
Mhm.
don't really get to have a vision, and that's what one of my therapists told me. She's like, you start your own thing. It's your vision. It's your way of helping people however you feel like you need to. And so I would started to be more intentional, because you would go on the websites and you would see a million white therapists, and then you would see
Right.
random black man sprinkled in here or there. And then I realized, like, okay, I get these emails from black people, but I have too many other clients, and I wouldn't have space for them. And I'm the type of person where I do feel bad, or I feel guilty. So when I
Right.
started my own thing, I'm like, I want to create space for people like me that may never try therapy if they don't find a black person or a
Mhm.
black man. So that's helped me a lot, because you'll get emails from people like telling you their whole life story, spilling their heart out. And then I'm like, thank you for the email. Unfortunately, I do not have space for you, basically. Wow, I can't find anybody. And you're like, man, what's going to happen to that person?
Right. Right.
And I was like, I need to figure out a way to create more space for people, because I know one thing about black people, that they'll have a idea, and especially black men, if it don't work out, you just go back to doing what you've been doing.
Mhm.
Like, I've been making it. I've been getting through. I try to get therapy. Nobody answered. You know how many times where you get kind of rejected by a
Right.
therapist before you're like, oh well, I tried,
And in some cases, it's once. It's one good
right?
time, and they're like, "Nope."
Exactly. And my goal is to always respond, because a lot of therapists, you'll send an inquiry, they don't respond at all.
Right.
And I think that's not fair to a lot of people,
Disheartening.
right?
Right.
So I always try to make sure I respond, and I always try to send them like a link or something, especially when people ask to see like their kids or their teenage boys, or especially their black teenagers. And I'm like, unfortunately, I don't work with, children or adolescents right now, but here's some people, or here's some links. And
Mhm.
I'm like, something's better than nothing, because they may not know where to look.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Excuse me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Kanye, right?
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to go into like the details of everything that's happening, but
Yeah.
it has been known that he has mental illness, right?
Yeah.
So in my head, my point of view on it is like, how deep is the stigma where you can have all the money in the world and still not get the help that you need? Because
Yeah.
even the most, for lack of a better word, normal or like, regular everyday people can use therapy.
For sure.
So somebody who's been in the spotlight for so long and, everything else and has an actual documented mental illness, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, is it the stigma that's stopping him, or is it just he doesn't want to get therapy and we're just going to watch this play out
Yeah.
publicly?
Yeah. I no, it's been a lot for sure. I'm a Kanye fan for the most part, and I think a lot of times it just depends on your support system, your inner circle of people.
Mhm.
Do you have the right people in your life to be able to reel you in and to tell you if you're not well, or if you're, and some people, they do, and they just don't listen, right? They have those people, but the people aren't able to get to them because they're, in whatever headspace. But I
Right.
think, it's just, I think when from the outside looking in, being, a regular person, and that's him being a celebrity, you don't know really who his people are if you think about it.
Right.
Like, oh, his mom, okay, she passed away, unfortunately. He's,
Mhm.
his ex-wife or wife, that's not a good relationship right now. So it's like with Kanye, he's like, everybody claims they're his friend, and that's their bro and they're his brother. But it's like some people, who they're like, even a celebrity, like, who their support system is, at least from the, from the
Outside
celebrity,
looking in, right.
exactly. So it's with him, it's just, I even watched like the Drink Champs and stuff like that. And then they had to backtrack and apologize and all that. But it's just
Mhm.
like, like, you're Nori, you're supposed to be one of his friends. I was like, okay, you allow the interview for what, right? You're like, oh, I just want to give him a space to vent. Okay, but does that have to be on Drink Champs in that
Right.
setting for
In that
millions of
public
people to
setting.
see, right? So I
Right.
think at the end of the day, Drink Champs, regardless of what happened, they win from that, because now people are like, oh, I didn't know what Drink Champs was. I
Mhm.
saw that Kanye interview, so everybody wants to find it and find the links to it, and the videos and things. So it's just, for me, it's, I feel like there's some truth in some of the things he does, but I feel like there's always a way to behave. There's always a way to get the outcome you desire without having to, do some of the antics and have some of the moments he has. But at the end of the day, it's like some of the clients I have, you don't really know, and because you aren't them, you don't know what he's
Right.
tried before, and he has to, like, now be so radical that nobody hears me, nobody's gonna help me, so I'm gonna just burn it all to the ground, and start all over or something. So when I see stuff like that, there's so many thoughts I have. But at the end of the day, it's like, I feel like it's unfortunate for somebody, because he has family, he has kids, and you see that your
Absolutely.
person you care about is has people divided. Literally, people are like fighting for him, and people are like canceling him.
Mhm.
And I feel like if you're a part of his inner circle, it's just a tough space, to be in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As far as kind of like canceling him and silencing his voice, because at the end of the day, whether this is an episode of mental illness kind of playing out or not, do you think the best route is to allow it to happen or privately, or to continue to let him have access to I mean, everything he has access to, he's Kanye. Like
Yeah,
his
right. Like
platform is huge. So
starting his own social media, like,
right.
Donald Trump or somebody.
Exactly.
And I think it's, they're rich, they're celebrity. They'll find a way, right? Or people will deliver their messages somehow. They have people, but I think you know, that's a tough question because clearly he's going through something. But
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, he's offending a lot of people. The people
Right.
that did maybe nothing to him, like the whole George Floyd thing and other thing about the Jewish community. At the end of the day, wrong is wrong. Like
Right.
you can feel how you want, you can, have whatever beliefs, but there's a lot of people affected by the things you say. There's a lot of people walking around with a lot of hate in their heart towards certain groups of people as it is. So it's
Mhm.
like, with Donald Trump, they're like, oh, we got to get him off the internet because he's firing people up who already have this hate in their heart.
Right.
Like he's like, oh, I didn't do anything, but those people have been waiting for somebody to say, do it. Go
Mhm.
harm somebody, go burn something down, and now like you're a person you really, are behind says it or says things similar. I feel like that's putting people in danger because words are powerful. People are like, oh, he's just saying stuff. I'm like, that's not true necessarily. There's people who hang on to somebody's every word and now they're
Absolutely.
running around yelling Jewish people that. I'm like, I don't know enough about the Jewish community to be following somebody's opinion.
Mhm.
I don't know enough about a lot of that celebrity stuff to just say, oh, well, the George Floyd thing was all propaganda. It was all a hoax. It was all,
Right.
there's an agenda. That's somebody's family. That's somebody's loved one. That's somebody's dad at the end of the day,
Mhm.
so I think a lot of the stuff, there's not a lot, but some of the things he does talk about are right, are real. But I think it all, like a lot of things, it gets lost in the mess. That the message gets lost because of all the other antics. So you forget all of the things that he said were, you know, pretty positive or pretty spot on because of, a lot of times the bad outweighs the good, of course. So now you all remember is the communities and the people he hurt with his words. So I think it's probably a safer bet to not allow him to be on the internet,
Right.
right now, because I'm assuming that it wouldn't get any better right now. Maybe a break or a timeout would be helpful.
Go
So
to the
he can,
corner.
right, like so his people and he can figure out whatever his plan is, or maybe this was his whole plan and maybe he's fine now, So I think it's probably best right now, at least. I know people are like, oh, freedom of speech, but you just can't say anything about anything, like I get it, it's freedom of speech, but there are consequences to speech. There are consequences
Right.
to behavior. So, you know, I- I'm sure somebody will disagree, but I think, to each his own. And I
See, if
think,
Rich was here, Rich would disagree.
yeah, right. You
I
know,
was actually having
I watch some of your other podcasts and stuff, so I kind of know
you
who's
get a
who.
vibe for who Rich is. Yeah. I was actually having a conversation with him about not like exactly this part of the topic, but about Kanye. And
Yeah,
he was just saying, well, the black people, we should support him and we shouldn't cancel him.
yeah,
White people don't cancel other white people. And I'm
yeah,
like, well, that's first of all, that's not true because they do. But second of all, difference being is, a lot of other celebrities don't shit on their own race and then go on to shit on others and expect us to
yeah,
have your back. Like Candace Owens, for example, just because we're talking about this particular instance. Like if something were to happen and every white person were to turn their back on her, do not turn to us
yeah,
and say, well, what about me? Like you can't,
yeah,
just because you are a black person, you can't sit up here and talk about George Floyd and White Lives Matter. And I do feel like I'm not saying he hasn't done anything for the black community because he
yeah,
has, but I feel like you can't, or saying things like slavery was a choice
yeah,
and like expect people to support you when you're down.
yeah.
Because that's honestly To me, it's insanity. It's almost like the definition of insanity when they say you keep trying something, trying the same thing and getting different or the same result or different results. Sorry, fucking
Yeah.
up. But it's very similar to that. Like you can't just keep burning bridges and expect to be able to cross back over it
Yeah.
when you need to backtrack.
Yeah. No,
So,
I think that's true too. Like you said, a lot of people, they may say something against another race or culture, community, and typically don't say anything about their own.
right,
But there's this other group of people now that are canceling them, and but their own people probably aren't, or most of them aren't. It's maybe some, right? But I think that's the thing too. He's like you say, he's burning multiple bridges with people from all different backgrounds, and what's the outcome he's looking for, ultimately. I think people are kind of waiting to see what the plan is, what the goal really is here, because I'm
right,
sure this is something to get to somewhere. uh,
right,
this is just not all for nothing. Even if it's some mental health, I'm sure there's some strategy in this as well.
right. Absolutely. I mean, ooh, I think the statement's going to be kind of loose, but I'm going to say it anyway. But I feel like, in a sense, in not all mental health circumstances, but in a few mental health circumstances, it's similar to being intoxicated, where they say, like drunk tongues speak sober minds.
Mhm.
Like as you're going through this episode and you're saying all of this, and wherever it's coming from, although it feels like it's coming out of nowhere, there has to be something fueling it, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. So that's
yeah,
why I was like, I don't wanna say like, "Oh, mental health and drunk people are the same." Absolutely not.
right.
But
But
just
you
in
don't
the
have full
sense of
control over yourself, right?
right, right.
People need that shot before they talk to that girl, that person. People, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I'm super nervous at somewhere, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a little drink or something. Does it
Mhm.
do anything really for me? But I think my mind makes me feel like, oh, now I'm looser, I'm more comfortable. It's
Right,
just different situations. You feel like now you're able to kind of be more your authentic self without the nerves and things. So it's like when you're in a episode or a crisis, you don't have that awareness as much as like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. I probably shouldn't say that.
right.
You say what you really wanted to say, because you don't have now that filter to
Mhm.
kind of
Which
tell
is
yourself.
usually medication or somebody in your life that's no longer.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I know that on Saturday, Rich is going to have so much to say on our Shit Talk Saturday about the subject matter um, in general. But I'm glad that I had this space to speak it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Kanye is like a genius when it comes to like the music and the fashion and stuff. And the thing that I think, I'm like, I hope that doesn't get lost with all the things, all these moments, all these pop culture moments.
Right.
And I think that's the part people struggle with these artists who do things that are criminal or against the grain. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this person is his music though, their music though. And I'm like, yeah, it's a hard conversation because, like you said, there's people who want to cancel it, there's people who's all for him, and
Hmm.
how dare you, say anything against him. So I think, it's like a lot of things. It's just allowing people to feel how they need to feel, and that's like a huge part of therapy. Like you get to feel how you need to feel. I can't
Right.
tell you what to do. So I think everybody's allowed to have their opinion, and I think that's the part that people don't sometimes understand, is like you can't like force somebody to see what you see. 'Cause
Exactly.
we're different. So I think if you're rocking with them, hey, more power to you. If you're not, that's a choice as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I would like to take this time to thank you so much for joining me this evening and for just talking a little bit about yourself. If you want to, I don't know if you're taking new clients or if there's any kind of information, if you want to plug yourself right here, go for it.
Yeah. I kind of taking new clients maybe, but I am, the proud owner of Anthony Quarles Counseling or Quarles Counseling. Um, can you put a link in these things or
Yeah, you can.
I'll leave the link to my Psychology Today page where you can find all my information and my link to, book a session if necessary.
Dope.
Um, leave a comment.
And as far as DJing goes, you're
Yeah,
located in
DJ, and I'm in the Hampton Roads area, so Norfolk, Virginia.
that's where Rod is. He's been popping in.
Yeah.
So Rod, he's out in your area
Okay.
DJing.
Yeah. So I'm out here. I DJ a little bit. That's more of my part time situation now. My wife said I'm doing the most, so I'm a listen because she's typically right. So I think I'm like DJing is like the third thing on my list, priorities when it comes to work. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I'm DJ Q. I'm that dude AQ on I think all my socials, Instagram, TikTok. I make some TikToks here and there. I need to get back to it. That's a good way to, promote yourself and
Recognize
things like
that.
that. Yeah. So I appreciate you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a great conversation. This episode and every episode is brought to you by RDI Financial. You can't help broke people being broke. So make sure you hit up Rich and RDI Financial for all of your credit and financial needs. We will be back on Saturday for Shit Talk Saturday. And then next month is our 1 year anniversary of podcasting. So we're super excited about that. We'll have some dope things in store for you guys. And then all next month, we'll be talking about veterans. Rich is a vet. My husband, Jamal, is a vet. So they will be on here. I actually get the month off, so I'll be chilling. They'll be taking over for the month. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay unapologetically Black. Have a good night, guys.